If Africa does not simultaneously invest in these 4 key pillars, again, health and well-being, governance and accountability, education and skills management, this would be a disaster. For many countries, and I've mentioned that before, for many countries have done great in education, have done great in health and well-being, have done great in other pillars, but maybe they have slowed, or they are not doing much on the part of accountability and governance. That has led to a disaster. I would refer you back to the Middle East crisis. It was governance, accountability gone wrong. But the rest, attitude, training, health, education, were good. But for a country or for a region or for a continent like Africa, the 4 need to be moving together, which we call a cross-sector and simultaneous investment, so that you don't leave any wheel or any pillar behind if we are to harness the population to be a dividend.
This is the Policy Digest, a Center for Policy Analysis podcast that explores how African societies are governed and how people and their leaders are shaping the future of their communities. Through candid conversations and insightful analysis, we aim to provide a deeper understanding of the political, economic, and social landscape of Africa. So sit back, relax, and get ready to explore the diverse and dynamic world of African governance.
Hello, everyone. Greetings from the Center for Policy Analysis. Welcome to this episode of the Policy Digest. My name is Timothy Aine. We are going to dive into an engaging discussion with one of the very researched people that I have had the pleasure to know recently. But the discussion is going to help us find a nexus between the population growth, migration trends, but also conflict within Eastern and Southern Africa. Giving a background of the conflicts that have happened, for example, in countries like Southern Sudan, countries like Sudan, Somalia, Somaliland. We have tensions in Eritrea, and there is a growing conflict that has been there for some time now. I can recall 40 plus years now in DRC. What does that mean for the young people who are in these countries? Not necessarily speaking to those in these countries, but also at a global scale, because we are having 78% of our population in Africa under the age of 30. What does that mean? Stay on and listen in. Very interesting discussion. Well, on the show today, I have a guest who I will love to introduce to you, and he is a lecturer of Makerere University and the director at the Population and Social Development Institute, PSDI. Dr. Mushomi is the chairperson of the upcoming conference on Africa Regional Conference on Parliament and Legislation, AFRIPAL. AFRIPAL is the inaugural conference that will bring together researchers from all over the continent, that is going to take place in June this very year, and it is going to be held at Hotel Africana. But alongside different people, we have partners like WFD, have partners like CAS, the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. We have partners like PSDI, the Parliament of Uganda itself, and this will be hosted by the Center for Policy Analysis. Dr. John Mushomi still holds a PhD in population studies from Makerere University in Uganda, and he has had advanced qualifications in demography from the Cairo Demographic Center in Egypt. He has been a consultant to various government departments, contributing to Uganda's national planning frameworks and regional dialogue on population and development. He has done work around youth migration in Eastern and Southern Africa. He has done work around modeling Uganda's potential for a demographic dividend, and he has supported data-driven planning for inclusive development and governance in Uganda and in the region. Dr. John, welcome to the Center for Policy Analysis, but specifically the Policy Digest.
Pleasure. Thank you, Timo. Pleasure to have you, and greetings to the viewers, and looking forward to a wonderful and engaging conversation. Thank you.
Doctor, maybe to really focus on the key research areas that you're dealing with, could you kindly tell the viewer or give us a brief into what are the trending patterns, try to contextualize them in regards to migration?
Thank you, Timothy. Migration is the third population dynamic, so to say, and therefore permit me to say more of population dynamics, and migration is one of them. Beyond migration, we have mortality, or which is deaths, but also we have fertility, which is births. And our work as demographers, occupation scientists, we work on the interaction between the three and how they are related to development. Key pointers through this conversation, Timothy, and the viewers, I will be referring to three key aspects or keywords, and permit me to dive into them. One of them is population in general, population dynamics in general. Secondly, inside population, I will be talking about Uganda's special population group called the NEETs. The NEETs refer to the young people who are aged between 18 to 30, who are not in education, not in training, and not in employment. In other words, we have a group of young people. You mentioned 70%, actually 78% are below 30. But I pick a special group, which is an active one, which is the youth group, which is 18 to 30. They are not in education, not in employment, and not in any training. And this means quite a lot. Out of that 51%, out of the group which is 18 to 30, 51% currently in Uganda belong to that group called the NEETs. The second aspect I will be referring to is the middle age crisis, still applying to the 18 to 30. The middle age crisis are you and me, where that group currently in Uganda and probably in the region wants to achieve what our parents achieved in 30 years, and we want it now within 2 years or less. That will be the middle age crisis I will be referring to in the conversation in the next hour together.
So you talk about the middle age crisis. Can I say we could now speak to millennials? The millennials and the boomers slightly below. Now the boomers are around 38 below.
Generally you can use the Gen Zs, millennials, boomers, and the Generation X. I am on the border.
I don't want to bring in the Gen Zs, but because maybe we'll dive into this later on.
Yeah.
Let us look at at the migration of this, because we now have things to deal with. People are moving from place to place looking for employment. Could you now get us to a nexus point where we have the NEETs and the middle age crisis group that are moving? What is the drivers of these movements, of the migrations?
So thank you, Timothy. Besides the NEETs, I will be referring largely, one of the drivers, explain the drivers, I'll be referring to another concept called the demographic dividend. Now the NEETs, which is 18 to 30, if the right policies, the right actions are put in place for a population aged between 18 and 30, or largely, let me expand it, 15 to 64. This is a working age. If the right policies are in place, this population is supposed to be an opportunity for a country to harness into a dividend. Now, a dividend from business point of view is that you put in and you get profits. So a country's population can also be a profit. Now, the NEETs are a country's burden, are a country's disaster, are a country's bomb, a country's challenge. Yeah. But if we could reduce the NEETs, those not in education, not in employment, not in training, and you have those in working age actually working, and those working, they're actually saving, and those saving are actually investing, and those investing are actually investing right, with the right attitude, with the right mindset, then a country like that would actually have a dividend.
Doctor, this is going to be really, really deep. We have a population increase of 3.6% per annum. Yeah, if I'm
3%
right.
now.
Yeah, 3%.
Yeah.
We have issues to deal with birth control issues, where some of these things are not legalized now. And you're saying that these young people should not reproduce at a certain point. Help me find a connecting point. I want us to... Who has failed who? Who has failed who in this whole context of...
Thank you, Timothy. The word birth control is a non-starter, and countries all have moved away from the word in itself, because populations are not to be controlled. Populations are supposed, we should talk about a quality population, not a controlled population.
But if we are not going to have so many people that we can't plan for, then what do we do?
Very good one. That's a very good one. Actually, we're not moving about empowering people, families, countries to plan for populations as opposed to control populations. And therefore, like you have already mentioned, the connecting point is that if I could refer to a dividend now, when a country, today in Uganda, we are over 45 million now, and what we do with it matters. Today, even if every couple chose to have one child only, we have enough girls to give birth, and we will be more than 100 million by 2050. And therefore, even if we reduced as low as one child per couple, the girls already here are a good momentum to contribute to actual growth. So growth may be a guarantee, but what we do with the growth or what we do with the population now matters. And that takes me now into the connecting point of migration. You've heard of the famous statement that the last Ugandan should put off the lights or should close the door. What probably that means to me is that migration is on the face.
And another one is if you ever get that chance to leave Uganda, please just go, just leave.
Just leave.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, those could be sentiments of the population, but we also know there is something beyond the statement. I think for me, migration in its own sense has about 7 types. So there is forced migration, there is migration for education, migration for work, but the question would actually be, who is going? Yeah. What skill set do they have? What view do they have about Uganda, their country? What has sent them? What are the policy frameworks or what are the regulations on harnessing those who have moved? Why have they gone? How have they gone? Are they returning? How have they returned? It should be the concern of, and I mentioned we would want to go into the region and what's actually happening. I will be delving deeper into that and how I think this is connected to population aspects in the region. Thank you.
Maybe before we get there, there are some interesting statistics. In January, actually, this very year, the McKinsey Global Institute produced a report, and it shows that sub-Saharan Africa shares global population, shows that the sub-Saharan Africa's global population will rise from 16% to 34% by 2100. And that is more than China and G7 nations combined.
Yes.
I am trying to get to a point where you more of like to address the brain drain challenge.
Yes.
So the IMF in this report projects that 450 million new workers in Africa by 2050. Africa will have 450 million new workers by 2050. And that in and itself is equivalent to the entire European Union workforce. Meanwhile, as we are talking about all these statistics, the G7 countries, their workforces are shrinking in numbers. So it gets to a point, one, where we see Africa as the youngest in terms of demographics in the world, but also with rising worker to retiree ratio until something like 2075. We see Africa as a region whose workforce is still growing in the next 50 years, and it will be a third of the global population. So Africa's as the youngest population on the globe, where we have 78% that are below the age of 30 years. Do we see this as a demographic dividend or a looming disaster?
Thank you very much for that, Timothy. I would add, focusing on East Africa, actually, I've just been checking. We are currently 510 million people, and we represent 6% of the world population. So coming down the region also, it has its own context. Uganda is 4th in Eastern Africa after Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Kenya. And Kenya. Timothy, I will tell you straight that the demography of a country is its destiny. So every country's destiny lies in its demography. So demographics mean quite a lot, and you've just mentioned that the Africa is the youngest, and we're going to be the youngest. What probably this means is that I would look at it from the context of opportunity, because if you're young, the opportunities lie ahead. Actually, that is now a potential of a dividend. Not the dividend yet. But there is an opportunity for Africa, for Uganda, for East Africa to actually turn around its population to be a destiny.
I think it could be one of our greatest assets as a continent.
If harnessed.
If harnessed. You put it rightly.
So it is it a disaster for Africa? Probably no. Is it a potential? If nothing is done, if business as usual on our education, our economy, our health and well-being, our governance pillar, if they do not move together and simultaneously invest, if Africa does not simultaneously invest in these 4 key pillars, again, health and well-being, governance and accountability, education and skills management, this would be a disaster. For many countries, and I've mentioned that before, for many countries have done great in education, have done great in health and well-being, have done great in other pillars, but maybe they have slowed, or they are not doing much on the part of accountability and governance. That has led to a disaster. I would refer you back to the Middle East crisis. It was governance, accountability gone wrong. But the rest, attitude, training, health, education, were good. But for a country or for a region or for a continent like Africa, the 4 need to be moving together, which we call a cross-sector and simultaneous investment, so that you don't leave any wheel or any pillar behind if we are to harness the population to be a dividend.
Yeah, I think I also remember a certain piece I read. I think that should have been last year. I'm forgetting the author, but he was advancing an argument that governance is one of the key potential drivers for economic development.
Yes.
There is no specific doubt. So if governance is wrong, I don't know how we shall maybe get economists to revisit the Middle East model of governance and how they have managed to really do it economically. But that's for another day. You talked about 7 types of migration, and we have slightly touched on the first, on the brain drain bit. But allow me go back to the first migration. As of February 2025, this year, Uganda hosts 1.8 million refugees and asylum seekers. What does that mean for the host country like Uganda at this time? Especially at a time when we have neighbors that are in armed conflict. Even some researchers have argued that Uganda could be fertile. There is recipe for conflict to a certain extent. What does that mean for us as Ugandans and the country?
Thank you, Timothy. I am a demographer, and I may not authoritatively comment on governance perspectives, but even when I know that governance fuels the engine of development, you can do everything right. You don't have governance right, you are most likely leading nowhere. And we've seen it we've seen it in our time. What does this mean? Uganda, yes, thank you very much for that statistic. 1.8, 1.6, sometimes depending on the source, and there are about 4 schools of thought. But also there is also a homegrown thought. I am one of those who believes Uganda is the best country in the world, and using my own indicators, and therefore one of the indicators is that we are home to different people, different neighbors, and as a fact, we are actually we have the highest number in Africa hosting refugees. But what does that probably mean? It could mean hospitality. It could also mean business. It could also mean politics. But it could also mean that we are doing nothing about it. Now, depending on which school of thought the viewer or the analyst comes from, the hosting of refugees, I think for me, it is work that needs to be done. What do the refugees think? Who is hosting them? Is it Uganda? Is it the development partner? Is it the government? Is it the United Nations? And what is the role of Uganda, and how can we contextualize? What about Ugandans? How about Ugandans? Do we have a choice? Do we have a choice? Do we have profit out of that? I think we've been trained to be good neighbors. We've been trained to be good hosts. But what that means, it could be differently seen or viewed depending on which eye is looking at it.
Yeah, you talked about who is hosting who and whose business is it really for us to be hosting the 1.83. But when you visit some of these host communities, or even here around Kampala in the city, I believe you have been to places where, especially the inner cities of sorts, been to Kabalagala, you've been to places like Kagugube, been to places like Old Kampala. One of the most striking shots that you get from the indigenous people, they will tell you, in these people, we can no longer afford the costs of accommodation. It goes back to what you raise. Is it business for the country? Because I believe there is always a partnership with these the development partners and the human rights across the board. How do you make of that? Does the government really listen to our indigenous people, or it just says, look guys, let's host these people? And I remember during the NAM and G77 Pass-China conference, our Minister of ICT was like, oh, look guys, as these the convoys are on the road, please always smile. So yeah, give us your take on that.
Thank you, Timothy. There is a saying that the spirit of the leader is a leading spirit. The country can only be the spirit of a country can only be the spirit of its leader. Our good president, with all honor and due respect, has posted or has a very clear stand that Uganda can only be safe as far as the region is safe. Also president's perspective on that is that we may not have so much, we may not be the richest country, but please host the person on the run. But also, thankfully, Uganda is not in it alone. What we probably don't know is a percentage. I think Uganda in itself wouldn't do this without great development partners, UNHCR, United Nations, other countries that are supporting this. So Uganda wouldn't take the praise alone. I think everyone, there are many hands involved. But so to say, many countries have not probably given as much that Uganda has done. I think for me, the president's view and the country's view is that we need to contribute towards this as our brick towards regional security, regional peaceful coexistence, even as our anthem says. And I think we are doing our brick and contributing towards harmonious coexistence with all neighbors and contributing to giving temporary peace for those on the run until they find their final home. I think for me, my take on this is probably an applause to the approach to hosting of refugees. Uganda's perspective is different from all other countries that host refugees. Because we've decamped, because we have actually approached refugee status from camping to decamping, but as well as allowing refugees to integrate into the community. The World Bank and the Prime Minister's Office have now the development approach. And one of my PhD students is actually working on questioning the extent to which Uganda's refugee policy is authentic. He's actually questioning for the last 75 years how policies guidelines have actually evolved. And one of the early conclusions he has is that no policy is a policy. So our approach to actually this is we will handle as the situations come. And when the guidance is needed, we will meet and give the guideline. Whether this means, to what extent this is sustainable, to what extent this means for refugees, Ugandans, if, for example, United Nations pulled out, is a question for another day and probably another conversation. But I think for me, my take is that different from other countries that are actually hosting refugees, Uganda is approaching host of refugees from the development and sustainable point of view. That while here, before you go to your next destination, can you be useful to yourself, your community, and the country that is hosting you? So we now look at a hospital for refugees to be a hospital for host communities. We look at a market for refugees to be a market for host communities.
Maybe not to cut you short, but I mean, there have been really so much, not really so much, a few parcels of conflicts between host communities and refugees. But maybe those are really not smaller issues, but they can be addressed by the OPM's office, and harmony is restored again. Because I understand even the refugees themselves have a background where you find that even themselves are hostile within their So if that translates to the camp, or to now when they have also integrated with other people, then that's really dangerous. Maybe, Doctor, before we take a short break, for the viewers, please, this is the Policy Digest, and if you have really any comments, any concerns, you can always get to the comment section. Reach out, share, then we will do respond, and maybe we can as well bring the guest back. You never know, to really expound on some of the really concerning issues. Thank you so much. See you shortly.
The Center for Policy Analysis is an independent think tank shaping parliamentary democracy, governance, and public policy in Uganda and beyond. Our mission is to shape public policy and strengthen democratic governance by delivering high-quality research, fostering collaboration, and empowering citizens. Our vision is a democratic society with transparent, accountable, and responsive governance systems. What sets CEPA apart? A unique consortium model that integrates expertise from diverse partners for multidisciplinary approaches. We pioneer thought leadership, leveraging tools like artificial intelligence to enhance impact. Through collaborative advocacy, we empower stakeholders to engage with legislative processes, all while combining rigorous research with a deep understanding of Uganda's political economy. Our flagship initiatives include Parliament Watch Uganda, that bridges the gap between the citizens and Parliament, the Policy Digest podcast that explores politics and public affairs across Africa, and the CEPA Convo, our bi-monthly X-Space tackling key public issues. Our work spans parliamentary democracy, human rights, public health, road safety, climate justice, artificial intelligence, and more, including the Africa Regional Conference on Parliament and Legislation. Join CEPA in shaping policies, amplifying voices, and building a democratic future. Visit www.cepa.or.ug to learn more, or follow us on social media. The Center for Policy Analysis, a leading public policy think tank.
Thank you guys for staying with us after that short break. Doctor, before we went to the short break, we hinted on a few things here and there, but more to be specific, we talked about the camping, but also the demographies that we are talking about, middle age, that age crisis group, and the NEETs that really are a disturbing demographic. You as a demographer could we use migration to a certain extent as a development strategy?
Very good question, Timothy. I will tell you whether it is a strategy or no. Migration can be used as an indirect strategy for development. Yeah. The US today, the green card is one of the strategies to replenish the skill set that goes to the US. Otherwise, US alone, without migration, it will be no more.
Yeah.
Every year, I think about 500,000 green card entrances.
Yeah.
And,
sure.
and they are very clear on who goes, what education level, what skill set, what they do with them, and how they be integrated, the spirit you receive, and all that. In Uganda and in Africa, unfortunately, the migration strategy is to whom it may concern, and God for us all. We have porous borders. We do not fully know who is where, what are they doing, and what will they do should they return. For other countries at the US, it is the number one development strategy that has kept them moving to date. Today, if Ugandans who went to Iraq returned, I don't know whether there was a strategy on what they are doing, where they are. The young girls who go to the Middle East, when they return, how they return, how they reintegrate, what they use the money for, how it is used, probably a lot more needs to be done. So my answer is yes, migration can actually be a development strategy, but it depends on the approach. Uganda and Africa, we are yet to begin to think about how this can actually be a tool for development.
Yeah, actually, I want us to stay a little bit longer there. That is Uganda's position as of now. We are hanging in there in the balance. You as a demographic, someone who deals with data, someone who deals with research, could you point us to any policy blind spots that we could help navigate some of these things, but also to use migration as a development strategy indirectly, so to speak?
Thank you. For now, Uganda has more urgent and strategic issues, population aspects to use as a development strategy, and probably migration may not be currently urgent. Do we encourage people to go abroad as a development strategy? No. But whether it is a strategy or not, people are going.
It's a means for survival.
It's a means for survival, not a government strategy.
So,
do we have a strategy for them when they return? The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Investment Authority, and other relevant organs could actually put their act together and actually say, we have Ugandans who live abroad. Will they return? Do they come for a short visit? What do they do? Do we know them? How do we know them? I am privileged to have done a PhD on remittances, what money we receive from Uganda and what households use them for. It was quite interesting that a bigger percentage of households, my findings showed that they use it for for consumption as opposed to development and investment. A bigger percentage use them for birthday parties, burial ceremonies, family survival, as opposed to actually investment. So I think for me, Uganda has an opportunity to, first of all, to take note, to take a record, to get interested in who has gone abroad, how do they live abroad, and what do they do when they return.
When they come back.
Yeah. I participated in a survey on migrant welfare program. For example, the young girls who go to work in the Middle East, the new industrialized economies, or the new wave of migration, there is an opportunity therein. For example, there is an opportunity for them to save with NSSF. There's an opportunity for a migrant program so that when they return, they are useful to themselves and to the government. We could track how they receive money, how they spend money, and how they save for themselves and part for their government. And I hope that Uganda will buy into this migrant welfare program that's supported by the African Union and the IOM. It's a great program for a country to delve into. So it is not late because Ugandans will move and will continue moving, but what to do with them while there, when they return, might be some good homework for action for the government.
Yeah, and maybe this is like an addition on what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think it was the other week or 2 weeks ago, the government really took a plus in a step forward of giving, I think it is a 3-year tax holiday for domestic business entrepreneurs. So when you spoke about investment, I think especially as young people who are really looking for survival in all over the world, movement, migration, I think that could be one of the few things that we could utilize, especially for the people for the returnees.
For the returnees, actually one of the policy actions. I know policies do not necessarily bring development, but actions on what policies say matter most. The question that Uganda could begin to think around is, who is a Ugandan? When they are abroad, are they Ugandan? When they return, are they Ugandan? And I think for me, working on mindset, and that already ties in to what the Center for Policy Analysis supported in terms of the National Service Program. Can we wait for Ugandans that are get of every either degree, certificate, diploma, get a mandatory 12 months national service program, and not military service program, but national service program, where they spend 9 months in institutions doing apprenticeship, then 3 months, military training and patriotism training, so that when we go as Ugandans, we are Ugandan, we speak Ugandan, we think Ugandan, and we have Uganda at heart.
Yeah, and maybe to add on that, it could also be a follow-up for the people in government. I don't think it really stops at us talking about patriotism, being patriotic to Uganda.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the only home that some of us have, but Uganda itself should, the people, the state, the government should know that these are also Ugandans. I mean, some of the times you see some of these overwhelming stories of people that are in Saudi Arabia, that are in those Middle East, and whatever they are going through is not really something that you want your relative or someone close to you to really go through. So maybe, as we are pushing for the National Service Program, and I think also the government should also be deliberate on following up and really being proud of the fact that it has Ugandans outside Uganda.
That would be really work. I have asked whether is it only maids we produce best? Can Uganda participate in negotiating what we sell? Yes, we know we sell good manners, house management, housekeeping, but we also have great nurses. We also have great engineers. But I think for me, Uganda, like I've actually mentioned, how they go matters. Today, when you meet a Kenyan anywhere, he's Kenyan.
Yeah.
When you meet a Nigerian, he's Nigerian.
Yeah.
When you meet a US citizen, they are US citizens.
Yeah.
When you meet a Ugandan, you're not sure whether they are Kenyan, Nigerian, and sometimes by the time you realize they are speaking a local language, first of all, we even don't have a local language. So sometimes they be speaking Luganda and you are a Munyankole and they're speaking Acholi and you have actually no language you can use abroad. So by the time you actually realize, sometimes it's even better to actually identify yourself with none. Probably use English as an identifier. So I think for me, focusing on what we send abroad, the investment into the people, the investment, the software that we take abroad should be a focus. What's the experience at exit? What's experience at entry? Is there any engagement with the embassies? Can they be engaging enough? Can embassies begin seeing Ugandans as great assets, and Ugandans see embassies as home, as opposed to you only go there when you have a problem?
Yeah, and it also gets to the governance really question and issue. I mean, we have had stories where our embassies in some of those countries are casinos. So what do you make of that? Even some of our ambassadors across borders have been deported because they were harassing people. I mean, you see some of those countries really believe in liberal and democratic values to a certain extent. So when we have ambassadors harassing people who are on the streets protesting peacefully, I think, is that being Ugandan? I don't know. But away from that, I mean, it gets to a bigger governance question and so much more. But away from that, the growing tensions in South Sudan, in Sudan, post-colonial issues and a conflict in DRC, Rwanda, Ethiopia, Somalia, Somaliland. Do you see similar demographic patterns playing out in some of these countries? And if so, really, could you be specific whether there are signals of broader conflict, like exacerbating conflict to neighboring countries, which will also stem to migration, and then it's a mess. So I want us to kind of find a rejoinder and speak to that.
When there was a middle age crisis, I think, if I recall, thank you, if I recall, our president was asked to comment on whether he sees this come down to East Africa and Uganda in particular. His response was a smile. I don't know what was running in his mind, but looks like a smile meant far from it. Far from it. Certainly, the Middle East tensions were, if I could do a quick comparison before I go into what I think, the Middle East crisis for the countries that got affected, Egypt, Tunisia, Syria, all that, they were largely domestic. Arab Spring was actually coming from within, was domestic, was angry young people that were demanding a right to be heard, a right to be well managed. Yes, you may not necessarily completely remove the effect of an external hand, but largely the local or the domestic perspective was very strong. One of the reasons this may not necessarily apply in Uganda and then later into the region, one, they had a language they were using. Today, what brings us together as young people in Uganda, not even age. There is no language that brings us together. We don't have a language to use if we chose to ask what belongs to us, and therefore, and therefore, it may not be as successful as it were in the Middle East. But what I see for now in the region, is it a question of migration, youth demographics? I think I would consider it to be more of, first of all, it is not peculiar in all countries. The conflict in South Sudan, a conflict in DRC, conflict in Somaliland, all deserve contextualization in their perspective. But what is constant is demographics. Like I mentioned, the destiny of a country is in its demographics. If the young people were not available to take up the arms or to do what they do in conflict, I think there wouldn't be conflict. I think for me, the regional conflict can be contextualized depending on who externally is interested. 2, on the current demographics. 3, on who is interested in the conflict. And there is both regional interest and then there is global interest. And the mixture of the 3 is what we probably see. Sometimes what I see in DRC may be far from a Congolese. Even may be more of a Uganda or Rwanda as opposed to Congo itself.
Yeah. Doctor, we have a population of I think for those on our average population of 18 years, about 56%.
Yes.
56% of the approximately 45 million people. Doctor, you said very well that much of this population, they are NEETs. They have not gone to school. They have no survival mode. So what else do you want them to do? But also, the people holding guns in DRC, whether they belong to the Red Tabara, whether they belong to the M23 and 100 plus militia groups in DRC, they are not people aged 50 plus. They are not.
Yeah.
It is this age bracket that we are looking at. And the fact that these young people, and I don't think most of them are holding guns because they love to hold guns. I don't think so. It also speaks to survival. So if these people are socially conscious, and I think we are talking this at a time where we see really a different generation. That's why I said at the start that we shall come back to the Generation Z. A generation really so much aware, so much self-conscious. They have really tried to deconstruct most of these things. Corporate pollution, tried to deconstruct beautifully the gender parities, sexism, so many things. Do you really think that it is still... Yeah, I understand there might be different dilemmas and different contexts to what really fueled some of these conflicts in these regions. And I don't think we should say, oh, Uganda should not be worried, like you said, the smile the president gave, but we are here now. We are here, and like I said, some people are like, yeah, this is really a fertile ground, just give it time. And everyone is worried, by the way. You talk to millennials around, tell you, man, me, I'm looking for a visa anytime. Any person that you see is worried of their life. And if these people are socially conscious to that extent, and we still have a governance issue, what is it that is not being done right rather?
So thank you, Timothy. I will reiterate again that the destiny of every country is in its demographic. And what demography you have, what you're doing with your demographics, the policies in place, what you do daily defines the destiny of a country. Are we insulated? No, I don't mean to say we are insulated. What probably other factors, other forces are contributing, they are finding a fertile ground. The first fertile ground is the demographics. And among demographics, the best fertile grounds is a group of people who have nothing to lose and nothing to gain because they fall not in education, not in employment, and not in training. Now, that group is always available. It is one way. They will tell you where they're going later when they have reached. And I think for me, if we are to say, since today is DRC and Sudan and South Sudan, should this visit us, where will it find our 18 to 30? It should either find them in school or find in a gainful employment, productive employment, but also should find us with the right mindset. If today we qualify because of the policy strategies and actions, we fall within what we call an orphaned citizenry, and you find an opportunity that has actually come, you might actually find that it's fertile ground. So the demographers are here with us, but what we are doing with them, the policies, guidelines, practice, perspectives, and actions that are done daily in offices, daily in meetings, daily in innovation hubs, will determine if it flies here, how long it will be, and whether it can actually start. I think for me, working on the current demographics, similar that we have seen in other countries, might be a bigger part of what we need to do.
Maybe to expound on that a little bit further, I want you to give really a few recommendations to one, maybe policy makers, to the institutional frameworks, and those include peace building and regional blocks like IGAD, East African Community, but also you have to speak to the role of public think tanks, for example, like SEPA. I think you should speak to the roles and functions that the three really should contribute, so that we bridge this gap that is you tend to say no. You have had your reservations around not calling it a looming disaster, but I will say so. I will still say so. We will discuss later about it, but I will still say so. But yeah, what should these three entities do?
Well, thank you. I would like to begin with you, SEPA, and similar institutions. That one, could we move beyond speaking English and spending time in what I referred the other day as nomenclature nonsense? Nomenclature nonsense is speaking the same words, same similar sentiments, same way we do things, the same group that works in these spaces. They are a protected group, and you're speaking to yourselves, and then you meet together, speak to yourselves, speak nice words, regurgitate them the next year. year in, year out, and maybe begin giving policy alternatives, policy perspectives, and it should actually be into those that actually work in the way of localizing our engagements, not picking someone from far and you give a picture, but actually to begin rethinking who is using us, what are we using, how are we using it. Can we be honest with ourselves? Can we be honest with our governments? Can we be honest with our policymakers? As opposed to working for someone. I know that money is everything, but may not buy everything. But I think for me, an honest thought process for everyone engaged in this space could be a revisit. How much are we working with communities? How much are we working with researchers? What are we doing with evidence? What are we doing with training? What are we doing with decision makers? Are we part and parcel of a problem that we are postponing because we earn from the problem? Is our goal to achieve nothing, like I have heard? And I think for me, for governments, I think for me, governments are there and they go. I think for me, countries and decision makers need to rethink that a neighbor's problem. And I think for me, I credit the president. He will not sleep when a neighbor is on fire. The question would actually be, how much are the rest of governments? Because government is not one man. Government is different pieces. How much are we applying from a whole of society approach? If we host refugees if for example we choose to host refugees in Moyo, how much is a Moyo citizen involved? How much are we picking from them? And how much are they informed? I have learned that keeping people involved and informed is a new KPI as opposed to key performance indicator. I think for me, the government requires to keep people from a whole of government approach involved in the decision making, in actions, in implementation, as opposed to high level written, nice English cascaded down in English.
And also maybe to pick your final thoughts before we close this episode. What gives you the hope about the future of the young people, and the population dynamics? And I mean, with so many challenges, I see you are really still hopeful. What gives you the hope? And in your closing remarks as well, you can speak to that.
Thank you. The young people are here with us. And they will give birth. And they're not about to stop. The hope I have is that they will not remain young forever. It is a temporary stage, demographic stage, and they will move. For me, my thinking that the hope for the young people I have, as opposed to a looming disaster, I would like to call it an opportunity to harness. It is not harnessed yet, but even if anything good came tomorrow, they are here. They are here. There would need to be a balance between changing demographics and harnessing the changing demographics for development. So the first opportunity is there, that there are young people and others are coming and others are being born. The hope we have that there is a window. It has not closed. If the right decisions are made, if the right governance practices are implemented, the young people will be available to take an opportunity when they are no longer young. But while they are young, may they think about, may governments and decision makers and those in power contribute towards helping them raise the firewood they will use when they can no longer move to pick the firewood. So the opportunity of being young, Uganda being a young country, Africa being a young continent, is an opportunity therein to harness. My hope is that there will be actions to harness these opportunities of young people that are available.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. John Mushomi, for the deep conversation and insight. They were helpful. Like you said, I hope the people responsible are watching. And I think it's time to act. Yeah, for everyone, for me, for you, and for the person who is watching us right now. Dear our esteemed viewers, this is to say that this ends the episode of this discussion, but also you can find us on Podbean, you can find us on YouTube, you can find snippets of these conversations on TikTok. Subscribe to all those channels, and I will be there to serve you. Thank you so much. See you when you see us.
Thank you for listening to the Policy Digest podcast, the Center for Policy Analysis podcast that is profiling African ideas and people that are shaping the future of their communities. Subscribe to all our platforms on YouTube and Podbean.